Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Small Business Show. My name is Swire Ho from Garuda Promo, your host for the show. My guest today is Merrylue Martin from the Joy Group LLC. She's a celebrated people leadership strategist with decades of successful working with global leaders from all types of size of organizations to make their employees feel unique, respected, appreciated, fulfilled, and engaged. As a Fortune 550 senior executive, educational administrator, management consultant, and business owner, she has comprehensive experience in creating and delivering strategies that engage and retain top performers. How are you doing, Mary Lou?
I am great, Swire. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. For those of us who are not yet be familiar with your work, what should we know about you and your strategies?
Yes, I have been in one way or another always involved in people and leadership and organizational development in some form, shape my entire life. And I think what is most exciting about the work I'm doing right now, it is focusing on employing people that we want to keep. Number one, how to attract and find them. And number two, once we find them, how do we keep them? And there hasn't been a more volatile period, probably in the last 2 to 3 years, that has just really challenged all of us as people leaders on cracking that code and getting through this process. So I'm bringing in the work I'm doing right now these tactical tools and helpful real world ideas that leaders can use and put into practice tomorrow to start working on this whole retention thing.
Thank you for sharing. So let me give you this argument on some of the business owners that I talked to. Depending on where you are in the world, right? Some of us in North America are somewhat going back to normal. I have traveled out of state for a conference now. Are we back to normal? Should we still worry about people leaving? Because if it's back to normal, people need to go back to work and go back into the office, right?
Correct. Well, that's a great question. I don't know if we even know what normal is anymore. if we think about what's changed. What I am seeing right now is not back to the normal of the normal we knew before. We might be re-engineering a different normal, and I don't think that's all bad. When you look at the history of employer and employee relationships, so much of what we've seen as called the big resignation, the great quit, all the big quit, these things that are coined out there has come from a history of people feeling unempowered, feeling trapped, maybe so to speak, not having a voice. There's been so much command and control as there has been for decades. Leaders were in positions to say, it's my way or the highway, and if you don't like it, there's the door. We can't afford anymore to go there, because what's going on right now is there is a great deal of emotional turmoil in the workplace. So it may look like people are back to work. They're working at either a remote position, if that's an option for them, or a hybrid where they're coming on site a few days or not, or they're on site. We're definitely not seeing a complete recovery, if you will, for on site. I was just reading an article today that there is a $25 million fiscal loss to those who are owning retail spaces for offices and such around the country that are empty. So it's not just bouncing back. And I think we need to be prepared to go about leading people right now in a very, very different way than what we're used to. And we can talk more about that. The leaders that are getting what this people factor means, and I'll love to go into that a bit later, they're adapting and they're changing. So they are getting some success to keep the people that are coming to them because they get the human factor. So if that's incorporated in our new normal, then we're kind of maybe getting more steady state, but it's anything but normal. A lot of crazy workplace things going on right now.
Yeah, I'd love to dive deeper into employees retention. And you're right, I go to a busy area, what it used to be, right? A lot of space are empty, and it does not only affect the small business. When I call a vendor, which is really big, they are not available to help me because a lot of the employees at production are not there anymore. So they're on my end in the production side is actually slowing down. And to when I go to lunch sometime, when I order dinner, they're not open the restaurant because they couldn't find people entry level position to wash the dishes or take your order. So like it is real and it's affecting, from small business to a big corporation. Um,
Yes.
do you think it's because COVID affected us, or do you think it's been brewing for a long time and it's just the right place for employees to think different? And what do you think and advise clients now for employees retention?
Yes. I think COVID was a mere accelerator to a problem that has been brewing for years. If we think back to generations ago, I mean, even 20, 30 years ago, as I was talking earlier, it was a very different relationship. I know my folks would, my father in particular, would apply for a job. Hopefully, it would be a great job, and he'd keep that job for 40 years. And the company was very loyal, and he was very loyal to the company. And if you switched jobs and did it often, you were considered almost unstable or unsavory, or you weren't able to hold a job. That's not the case. And that started to happen around 10, 15 years ago. Almost the opposite started to occur. Human resource professionals, candidates, recruiters were looking at some jobs to see if there was movement, if there was growth, if there was promotability. It wasn't looked at as if, my goodness, well, why are you jumping jobs every 5 minutes? So I think that's definitely something that has changed. Now, when you bring the pandemic forward to part of that equation, I think here's what's happened. You take all of that history of people feeling they don't have options, they don't have a voice at work. It was very much a command and control by what that boss said, what that leader dictated, if you will. It was just really more about being told what you will do. You bring in a pandemic and you sprinkle in some of this acute awareness, literally overnight, that life is very fragile. We've had so many horrific stories of people losing friends and loved ones and family to COVID. And it doesn't take much to make that really stick between the eyes and bring us all a great wake-up call. And that was what started to happen. People started to question, what do I want out of life? For the first time, we have young people answering that question. And then you sprinkle in a third ingredient, and we all went to work for home. If we could work at home, those that were able to, which is a great deal of the working population. So people got a taste of something they've been trying to acquire for years, and that's the famous work-life balance. I want a better life. I want more free time. I want to be able to drop my kid off at school and then come back and get on a meeting. And so there's this control they were tasting. So when you add those three elements, it's no wonder that we experience the big quit, as we call it, the great resignation, when those factors came into play. And that's impacted us definitely. COVID didn't create it. COVID was the accelerator that just moved it forward in warp speed.
And I think especially if you're talking to younger generation, my son is 17, right?
Mm-hmm.
So colleges are getting more expensive wherever you are. So his thought, and I think a lot of his peers share the same thought, is why do I want to go into debt? So I want to be a doctor and then work the rest of my life just paying back that loan. What if I could make enough money to sustain the lifestyle that I wanted? Maybe I don't have to work all the time. I just work as needed, right? Mm-hmm. And there are also jobs that are created and being actually a profession, right? You can imagine in my time, like 30 years ago, that you could play video games and make a living out of it, and profitable too. You could be a millionaire playing video games. Now you can actually do that. So instead of working in a corporation for 40 years, I play games every day. I go live, and that's how I make my money. So I think the mindset actually shift from when you talk to your younger generation versus if you talk to me, I would probably take a corporate. Like, I understand why I have a family, right? But when you talk to kids his age, they don't think like that anymore.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think that leaders who are leading diverse groups of teams in terms of generations are doing the best when they understand that dynamic. And it's also very important that we don't try to approach employee retention with an organizational solution. And what I mean by that, Swire, is that you can take the job out of the human being, but you'll never take the human being out of the job. And what I mean by that is, as long as we're not employing a robot, as long as we're employing a real human being, there comes a package, a built-in package of many dynamics that we have to. And I say have to because it's becoming very apparent. The leaders that don't accept this change are not winning by keeping the best people. There's a set of parameters now because we're all human beings. It's the greatest leveler on this planet. We all have unique needs. And I'm going to give you an example, if I may, as we think about hiring these independent and unique individuals. All of us as a human being have what we call, I call it the 3 R's. It's a balance that people are after right now. You can call it work-life balance, but I don't think that's too helpful if we don't peel that apart and really look what's going on. And here's what's happening. Let's say I hire a new employee and I bring this employee on board. And after about 6 months, my employee starts to kind of get the lay of the land. It could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 days in this environment. But at any rate, they get a full understanding of what it is I have to do to succeed at this job. I call that the requirements. And I want you to almost think of a scale with a fulcrum in the middle, kind of like a teeter-totter scale. On that one side, there's that bucket of requirements. Now, if I'm hired by a restaurant and I'm a food server, that's going to include things like taking orders, picking up the food, delivering it. I may clean the tables, whatever all of those things are in the job description. We get that. There's also, however, some indirect requirements. I don't know what they are till I take that job. So for example, let's say I have got to miss my kid's soccer game on Thursdays because now I have to work. Or the office wants me on site. Now I have to drive an hour to get to that office. That's a requirement as well. So whatever they are, the personal requirements or the requirements of the job, they're now weighing on this employee. The second R that this employee starts to look at to determine if I'm going to even stick around are the rewards. And what I mean by that, those are the tangible rewards, the things that I can pick up, take away, and put in my pocket. Example, my paycheck. I might have a bonus. I might have a company car if I'm in sales. I might have an insurance benefits package. I might have entitlement to pay off that student loan. It all depends, but there's a bucket of things that I'm getting. So far, I'm hoping as an employee, as an employer, that scale's feeling pretty balanced, right? I'm putting out a lot of stuff I have to do, but I'm getting back things that I deem valuable. So far, so good. But hold on. Because we're human beings, there's one final R that's going to slide on that scale, and that's the respect. To what degree do I feel good while doing this job? To what degree do I have autonomy? How about my self-esteem here? How about, am I validated? Do I have a sense of purpose? That's a huge rally cry for people right now. I don't want to work at a job where I'm just doing this and that and this, and it's meaningless. Life is too short. Thank you, COVID. So people have completely reformatted how they're willing to work. And if all those 3 R's are in balance, you'll never lose that person. You'll get some variations. Let's say those requirements are pretty heavy, right? But let's say that reward bucket is just as valuable, it's just as heavy, and let's say that respect bucket's pretty empty. People will stay, they're going to feel more like a prisoner, and here's what they're thinking. I hate this job. As soon as I can get somebody to hire me to treat me like a human being, I'm out of here. However, where am I going to go right now and make this kind of money? Where am I going to go and get this benefits package that my son needs for whatever? They're going to start internalizing that scale. You can flip it. Let's say a small business owner, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have a vast corporate deep pocket to provide people with stock options and all those things. And here's what's interesting about that. People are willing to empty that reward bucket right now, more so than in the past, if that respect bucket is overflowing. And that tape in that employee's head goes something like this. Okay, I'm not going to get rich here, right? I still have to keep my barista job at the coffee shop on weekends, right? But I'm cool with that. But you know what? They treat me like gold here. I love working with these people. I'm free. I get to work. I get to show up, do my best stuff. Oh man, this is the best job. They're still at risk though, because if someone comes along and treats them with that much respect and the reward bucket's richer and their needs change, that may alternate. But here's the point, and we hear so much about this quiet quitting today. If an employer doesn't know how to balance that scale with the requirements, the rewards, and the respect, guess who's going to do it on their own?
The employees themselves.
You got it. It's called homeostasis. It's, if I'm not getting the rewards I think I need, and I'm not getting the respect I know I deserve, then I am just going to lighten the requirement bucket myself. And I'll make that scale balance. One last thought on this, because it's so critical for employers to understand this today. Every single employee is going to assign a different weight to what is either a reward for them or a requirement. Example, let's go back to that, I've got an hour commute. Now, some employees are thinking, that would be heaven. You know what? I could listen to a whole podcast. I could think. I could detoxify everything from work and rest as I'm driving. For some people, driving is relaxing and they're not concerned. For others, that's a game changer and a deal breaker. They'll never go to a job where they'd have to drive for an hour. But unless I have that, what I call the 3R conversation, and I'm asking you, Squire, is that a requirement for you or is that a reward for you? Where are you in all of the things that we have to get done here? And in my book, The Big Quit Survival Guide, I train leaders on even what to say, how to have that conversation, how to tap into that code. Because if we don't do that per individual, we're going to miss the mark. And that's the danger, because most of us treat people the way we want to be treated. And leaders are missing the boat. We've got to understand what it's going to take for that person, what they need. And we balance that scale as a result. So it's a huge paradigm shift that leaders must start migrating toward, because we cannot overlook the human factor. That's the biggest difference right now. Years ago, even as recently as maybe a couple of years, we used to call them soft skills. And they were sort of like, I'd rather go into training on how to improve my metrics. Okay, problem with that? unless you're the everything in that business, you're going to have to work with people to obtain those metrics. And now everyone's clamoring for the human factor training. I was very excited to see that there's now a crossroads coming together: behavioral psychology and leadership development. The two entities are becoming best friends, and that's how leaders are getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to really ask you, and you touched on the 3R. I think it's really important. I'd like to share two examples that I noticed in my life recently. We talked about restaurant couldn't find enough workers so then they can stay open. I went to a Japanese restaurant just over this weekend. They normally like to hire Japanese because they speak the language. Usually, the chef are older Japanese that worked in the industry for so long, and they couldn't find young people there anymore. I was surprised. I went to a Japanese restaurant. There are two non-Japanese server. We take our order, and then I found out that they actually speak fluent Japanese to the chef. So they are creating that reward type because there are people who are drawn to the Japanese culture, and then they actually learn to speak Japanese, and they actually will take less money, and they're young, maybe in their 20s, right? They're willing to have that experience, speak Japanese, work in a Japanese restaurant, and take less money. So that could be the reward for these young people, and the chef treat them with respect because you couldn't find what they call a foreigner that speak Japanese. That's not as popular, right? As people would speak English nowadays. And then at the same time, I belong to a local gym. There's a gentleman who's been helping to keep the washroom clean, and he got the respect from members, and they have like a big TV, and they have a lot of things in there, so we treat them kindly. But then we noticed that for the past 2 months or so, the company actually wants more responsibility out from that gentleman, and then he feel that the reward is not getting there. If you are put to more tasks, supposedly in the norm, you will get maybe a pay raise or a certain kind of benefits, right, so to speak. So at the end, he wasn't happy. So like you said, as soon as another offer comes along, it's gone. And now the bathroom looks like a mess without him.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's certainly no fun at a gym. But those are perfect examples, Swire, of what we've been talking about. And the most important part is for leaders to become aware that this is what's going on, and not misunderstand any of the behaviors. If we don't sit down and have those conversations, and we talk with people, and we understand what it's going to take to balance their 3R scale, it's going to be very difficult. I see so much money being wasted. I see, and certainly people right now are seeing right through that. You can't bring people in and promise them, more bagels or craft brews or even every other Friday off. These things aren't going to work because they're not tailored to an individual. Now, I'm not saying that we are going to allow individuals to do certain things that could create an issue if one person gets to do something the other person doesn't. We all have those confines, and we need to hold people accountable. But we certainly need to have the conversations to first understand, where are these 3Rs in the way you're looking at this job now. So it's something that's new. We are having to re-identify how that employer and employee relationship now looks. That's where the new normal is coming from. We got to work with people within people and skills.
Would you be able to share examples where companies are able to create an environment to attract the best talent? Seems like, from what I noticed, especially for the Japanese restaurant, they might or might not have the best pay in the restaurant industry, but certainly they have that available, for people who are drawn to the Japanese culture. So they wanted to be there, and, they attract those two young guys over there. Are you able to share some examples so we can, look inwards to see if this is something that we can do?
Yes, absolutely. Let's digress a bit, but it all fits together. Let's talk about this word culture, because that is a huge platform right now that is either going to make or break an organization. A couple of things have changed dramatically since COVID and since people are getting up to speed again of how they're going to work and why they're going to work. Culture is really what is allowed and what is promoted around a team or a business. We all have a culture of some sort in an organization, whether it's just me as a single entrepreneur, or whether I have just one employee, or whether I have thousands. Cultures are really what's being looked at today. And here's some advice, and I also have an activity that will fit right in with what people that want to work today and why they stay, because they have a feeling of belonging and they have a feeling of purpose. So culture, we can't ignore culture. What is it? As I said, these are normal behaviors that are allowed to take place wherever that group of work is happening. The problem with culture is we often say we espouse certain values in the company, in the team. We say this is how we want to roll, so to speak, but we're not operationalizing any behaviors that support what we say is important. That creates right there a culture of distrust. People are feeling uncertain. Do you act this way or do you say that? Where are you going to feel the most safe in this culture? And people aren't so willing to just sign up for a culture they've been handed. Here's an example. Those people that are feeling the most fulfilled and engaged at work right now are being asked to participate in things like culture. And here's how you would do it. Whether you have one employee, even if you're the only person working in that company, you can still do this activity. Let's say you have a team or yourself or 3 people, it doesn't matter. I want you to think about, as you're in that work environment, who would be the highest ranking person you would want the utmost respect from. You name the person, it doesn't matter. And then I would hand out, if I'm on site with everyone. If not, you can do it virtually. You can have them email it, whatever, doesn't matter. I would hand out a 3x5 card to each of these people. And I'd say, all right, I want you to write down 3 words on this card or on this board, however you want to do it. And those 3 words are the words that I would want you to write down to hope that when this person came and visited your team that day, they're going to shadow you and just watch the team. What 3 impressions, what 3 words would you want them to walk out at the end of the day thinking about that team? So they write down those 3 words. You can collect all the words. Now we look at them. We can filter them out. We say, look, oh, there's 3 here that say we are collaborative. Or, oh, here's 5 here that say we are hardworking. Whatever they are, it doesn't matter. Well, we're going to come up with those 3 words. Now we have invited everyone who is going to be in this culture to help create it. They've just done that. Then we take it one step further. And this is what I mean by operationalize your culture. So we say we value hardworking, whatever it was, these 3 words. Okay, what are we going to do now every day with our behaviors, with our actions, what we allow to happen, what we prevent from happening? What are the tactical day-to-day things we're going to own and do that will drive those 3 words? Now, that is how a culture gets created. It invites participation. This is exactly what employees want today. And I'm going to bet, I don't know this restaurant, Swire, but I'm going to bet that owner has had some sort of conversation with these folks. And the number one thing a leader can do to create the culture that they most would admire is to lead by example. It all starts at the top. If I don't lead by example, people are going to then follow my behavior, whatever that might be. And that's the real world for them. So it takes some awareness. Again, this is something that the message I want to get to entrepreneurs and business owners, because we're all taxed doing multiple things, right? And wearing many, many hats. We've got to put on and create a new employee retention hat. We have to go after our retention strategy to work with people just as fervently as we go after marketing, sales, operations, you name it, finance, any part of our business. We have to now focus on the people strategy as probably our number one right now. Bill Gates said, if you took 20 of my best people, there goes my business.
Yeah, that's very true. Merrylue, in closing, I would like to ask you more to speak on the book behind you, The Big Quit Survival Guide.
Yes.
And for listener who might have individual questions or want to get a deeper understanding of the 3R, how should they reach out to you?
Yes, the easiest way to connect, there's two ways. One, my website, which is bigquitsurvivalguide.com. And I wanted to also inform folks that if you go there, I'm going to give you the password. It's in the book, but I want to get the tactical tools in the hands of leaders who need them today. If you go to the website and you click on Survival Kit, there's a tab at the top. The password is survival. And what that will get you is 75 downloadable 8.5 by 11, you can print them all out, tools, just like the 3 by 5 card culture activity I just shared. All of those things, 75 pages, every chapter in the book has 3 or 4 activities, and I've put them all together so you can download them and use them. Another example of a tool that's there you can use. As a new leader, particularly, don't just tell me. It's really important to make sure your brand new employee has a great first day. Okay, what do I do? You don't have to think about it. I have a checklist for you. What you need to do, the 5 things if you're bringing them on remotely or if you're bringing them on in-site. I tried to take all the guesswork out of all these issues we're trying to just, get connected with. So the website is the first place to go. I also am very active on LinkedIn, and you can just look me up, Merrylue. It's Merrylue. It's all one word, and the last name is Martin. Just look for me there on LinkedIn and follow, and you'll be able to keep up with all the new blogs and tools and things that we post there as well.
Thank you so much, Merrylue, for coming on. This is a very important topic that we should all know. And go follow Merrylue and her work. Thanks for coming on today.
Great. Thanks so much, Swire.
Take care.